The village was buzzing with news about Ada and Obinna. Did you hear? Chike gave them a lot of money. One woman whispered, "They are now very rich." Another man added, "Some people were happy, others were not." Some whispered in jealousy. Chike had worked hard and rebuilt his business. The money Nneka stole was gone, but he made even more. Now, he wanted to help people. One evening, he called Ada. "You will handle the foundation project in the village," he said. Ada nodded. "I will do my best." The foundation would help single mothers and poor children. That was why Ada came back to the village. Far away, Ada's mother sat outside her small broken house. She heard the news and felt her heart tighten. Their roof was leaking. Their clothes were old. They had nothing. Her husband sat beside her, staring at the ground. "We failed, Ada," he said softly. Tears rolled down her face. "I must see my daughter." Her husband looked at her. "But will she forgive you?" She didn't know, but she had to try. The next morning, Ada's mother went to the market. She walked slowly, looking around. She hoped to see Ada, even from afar. Suddenly, she heard shouting. A woman was being dragged by two men. She was crying, "Please, give me more time." The men did not listen. "You owe me money. You must pay today." Ada's black car drove past. She saw the crowd and frowned. "Stop the car," she said. The driver stopped. Ada and Obinna stepped out. Ada walked towards the crowd. "What is happening here?" The money lender smirked. "This woman owes me money. She must pay now or come with me." Ada sighed. "How much does she owe?" As the man said the amount, Ada turned to her purse. She wanted to help. Then she looked at the woman's face. Her hands shook. Her breath caught in her throat. It was her mother. Everything around Ada froze. Her mother saw her and fell to her knees. "Ada, my child," she cried. Obinna looked at Ada, confused. "Mama, do you know this woman?" Ada's face was blank. Her heart pounded. She took a deep breath. Then in a quiet voice, she said, "Yes, she is my mother." Ada's mother fell to the ground, crying. "Ada, I have been looking for you." Ada's face was cold. Her heart was heavy, but she didn't show it. "You were not looking for me when I was suffering. You were not looking for me when I needed you the most." Her mother held her chest. "I am sorry, my daughter. Please forgive me." The crowd watched in silence. Some whispered, some shook their heads. Ada turned to the money lender. "How much does she owe?" The man smiled, rubbing his hands. He told her the amount. Ada opened her purse and gave him the money. "Let her go." The man bowed and walked away. The crowd slowly scattered, but some still watched. Without saying another word, Ada turned and walked back to her car. Her mother ran after her, holding the car window. "Please, come home with me. See your father." Ada froze for a moment. She had not seen her father in years. Did he even care about her now? Obinna, who had been quiet, touched Ada's hand. "Mama, maybe you should go." Ada looked at him. His eyes were full of questions. He deserved to know the truth. She sighed. "Fine, take me to him." The car stopped in front of an old broken house. Ada stepped out slowly. The walls were cracked. The roof had holes. The place looked worse than she remembered. A thin old man sat outside on a wooden chair. His hair was all white. His hands were shaking. When he saw Ada, his eyes widened. He tried to stand up, but struggled. Ada, he whispered. Ada stood still, staring at him. She did not know what to feel. She looked around again. This was the house she grew up in, the same house where she had cried herself to sleep, the same house where she was thrown out like she was nothing. She folded her arms. So after all these years, this is what you have left? Her father lowered his head. His voice was weak. We made a big mistake, my daughter. Her mother wiped her tears. Please forgive us. Ada took a deep breath. The pain in her heart was deep. The memories of her past played in her head like a bad dream. I have nothing to say, she finally said. She turned to leave. Her mother rushed to her and grabbed her hand. Ada, please, if not for us, do it for your son. Let him know his grandparents. Ada pulled her hand away. She looked at her mother, her eyes filled with anger and sadness. Obinna has a family. You are strangers. Without another word, she walked back to her car and entered. Her father watched her, his hands shaking. Her mother fell to the ground, crying. The car drove off, leaving them behind. That night, Ada lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling. Sleep refused to come. Her mother's tears, her father's weak voice, their broken house, it all played in her mind like a song she couldn't stop. Obinna sat beside her, watching her closely. He had been quiet for a long time, but now he spoke. Mama, do you really want to hate them forever? Ada turned to him, her face hard. They left me to suffer, Obinna. They threw me away like I was nothing. Obinna nodded. I know, but aren't we supposed to be better than them? Ada sighed. Obinna, you don't understand. But I do, Mama. You always tell me to do what is right, even when it is hard. So why can't you forgive them? Ada closed her eyes. Go to bed, Obinna. Obinna stared at her for a moment, then quietly lay down. But Ada couldn't sleep. The past refused to leave her alone. The next morning, Ada sat outside, sipping tea, when she saw an old man walking towards her. It was one of the village elders. She stood up to greet him. Good morning, sir. The elder nodded and sat down. His face was serious. My daughter, do you know why your parents abandoned you? Ada frowned. Because they were heartless? The elder shook his head. No, your uncle deceived them. Ada's body stiffened. What do you mean? The elder sighed. Your uncle told them you would bring shame to the family. He made them choose between him and you. If they accepted you, he would take their land and throw them out. Ada's hands tightened around her cup. What? They had no choice, the elder said, but they have lived in regret ever since. Ada felt something heavy in her chest. She didn't know if she should be angry or sad. All these years, she thought her parents threw her away because they didn't love her. But now, was it really their choice? She looked at the elder, her heart confused. Why are you telling me this now? Because I see the pain in your eyes, my daughter, and I know your parents are dying with regret. Ada looked away, her mind filled with thoughts. For the first time, she didn't know what to do. That evening, Ada walked to her uncle's house. Her heart was heavy, but her steps were firm. Obinna walked beside her, his face serious. When they reached the house, her uncle was sitting outside, chewing on a stick. He looked up and smirked. So, the lost child has returned, he said, laughing. Ada clenched her fist. You destroyed my life. You turned my parents against me. Her uncle chuckled. And what will you do? Cry? Obinna stepped forward. You stole their land. You destroyed their family. But now, we have power. Her uncle's smile faded. His eyes darkened. You think money can change the past? Ada took a deep breath. Then she smiled coldly. No, but it can change the future. Her uncle shifted in his seat. You should leave before you say something you will regret. Ada didn't move. You are the one who will regret, she said. I will make sure of it. Then she turned and walked away, leaving her uncle staring after her. The next morning, Ada hired a lawyer. She met with the village elders and told them everything. The elders listened carefully. When she finished, the oldest among them stood up. This is a serious matter, he said. If it is true, justice must be done. Word spread quickly. The villagers gathered, whispering among themselves. Many of them had known Ada's uncle for years. They never liked him, but no one had dared to challenge him before. When the elders summoned Ada's uncle, he came with a proud look on his face. This is nonsense, he said. I did nothing wrong. But then, the lawyer brought out old documents. The proof was clear. The villagers murmured angrily. He must pay for what he did. Someone shouted. The elders turned to him. You took what was not yours. The land must go back to Ada's parents. Her uncle's face turned red. You cannot do this. But they could, and they did. The land was returned. Justice had been served. Ada stood in front of her uncle one last time. This is just the beginning, she said. You will pay for every tear I cried. Her uncle had no words. He could only watch as his power slipped through his fingers. Ada led her parents to a beautiful new house. It was big, painted white, with flowers planted around it. A cool breeze blew as they walked in. Her mother covered her mouth in shock. This is for us? Ada nodded. Yes, you will never suffer again. Tears rolled down her mother's face. We don't deserve this, Ada. Ada looked away. No, you don't, she said quietly, but I choose to be different. Her father stepped forward, his voice shaking. My daughter, after everything we did to you, you still forgive us? Ada sighed. I don't want to live with hate. Obinna deserves a family, and so do I. Her father touched her shoulder gently. Thank you, my daughter. For the first time in years, Ada felt light. The burden in her heart was gone. Maybe this was the peace she had been searching for. But just as she thought everything was finally over, trouble was already on its way. That night, Ada sat in her room, looking at old pictures. Memories of pain and betrayal filled her mind, but she was ready to move on. Then she heard a soft sound. She turned. A small piece of paper was under her door. She frowned and picked it up. As she read the words, her hands trembled. You think you've won? The past is not finished. Be ready. Her heart beat fast. She jumped to her feet and ran to the door. She looked outside. The compound was empty. The night was quiet. Too quiet. She gripped the note tightly. Who sent this? She whispered. Obinna ran to her side. Mama, what is it? Ada looked at him, then at the darkness outside. She took a deep breath. Nothing, she said. Go back to bed. But inside, she knew the truth. The battle was not over. If you want to find out what happens next, the conclusion of the story, comment, continue the story below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next episode.